This podcast is about introducing our fans to the animals, plants, and other products that we work with at Josh's Frogs. It's an opportunity to paint a picture of our hobby that is refreshing. We want you guys to be successful with the animals that you're keeping, and we want our hobby to grow ethically and sustainably into the future. Welcome to the Josh's Frogs podcast. Today I have Hunter. We're going to talk about Phyllobates. Before we do that, just want to run a commercial. This podcast is brought to you by Josh's Frogs. We're your one-stop shop for everything you need for your amphibians and reptiles, from care sheets to blog articles to videos. We want you to know what you're doing before you're doing it, so we want to make keeping animals easy. We also ship everything from one location, so all your feeders, reptile supplies, all come in one box, and we want to take care of you, make keeping reptiles and amphibians easy. So without further ado, welcome, Hunter, to the Josh's Frogs podcast. Will you start off by telling us a little bit about like how you came to Josh's Frogs? Like how did you hear about Josh's Frogs? How did you end up applying for a job here?
I heard about Josh's Frogs a while ago. It was like middle school-ish. I had been watching some of the videos. I got some old ones of like you, Zach, and Austin up there talking about stuff. I had like leopard geckos at the time. And then, I don't know, through like high school and college, I would kind of like shop for dart frogs on the side. I was never ready to like take on an animal at that point in my life. But I went to school at IU studying animal behavior. So I was kind of like getting into that field, like, oh, what do I want to do? And like dart frogs have always been my favorite kind of animal. And Owasso is not too far from where I'm from. So like, yeah, I better apply here. Check it on out. And thankfully, like, you guys hired me. And that's how I kind of got started and heard about it.
I forgot that you were a Hoosier. I went to college in Indiana, not at IU, but I went to school in Indiana. So how long have you been working at Josh's Frogs now?
I've been here for like 2 years and like 4 months-ish.
Oh, cool.
I started on the team when we were like just large darts and like thumbnails and like spread out on a couple of different floors and stuff. It's been a good time. And then I kind of like transitioned a little bit into thumbnails. I did some feedings and stuff, but then like we were kind of at a point in the dart frog era where we were kind of changing things up, and then we divided things up kind of based on like morph and species. And now I do the Phyllobates and like dwarf tinctorius is what I've got going on in my room.
Oh, cool. Now, explain what you do like on a daily, weekly basis to somebody who like doesn't keep frogs. So like our aunts and uncles who have no idea about what exact animals are. Like, what would you describe? Like, how are you spending 40 hours a week taking care of animals? Like, what are you doing?
The beginning of the week, Monday, is a feeding day. Also on that day, we'll feed all of our like froglets and adults. I'll start with like the for sale inventory. We feed those guys, and then I'll raise up my small army of froglets. You got to feed them. We feed them every other day. And then the adults eventually by the end of Monday. And then Tuesday, today is Tadpole Tuesday. We'll do our tadpole raising and cleaning, make sure everyone's doing all right, collect the morphers that are ready to come out of the water. We check if they have like any of those front arms, and then they're ready to move on to the morpher stage, which then like from that shelf, we have the little guys kind of halfway in between their land and water phase of life on the 45-degree angle. We'll collect those guys, get them on the moss for that day. And then the back half of my Tuesday is egg collecting day. And that's a really fun task. You get to go in, check out your adults, and do a little egg hunt.
Oh, cool.
Every week.
Cool. And then it kind of repeats throughout the rest of the week.
Kind of repeats. Wednesday, we feed again. Then Thursday, we'll like clean egg clutches and then pull the tadpoles that have just freshly hatched and get them into cups and ready to go into like the other tadpole cycle we have. And then Friday's feeding again.
Cool. So it's kind of, you guys have split it up where you're doing like different species or groups of frogs. And so you're doing the whole life cycle from like taking care of the adults to taking care of the eggs to taking care of the tadpoles to taking care of the froglets. Okay, cool. So that group of frogs really becomes your group of frogs. Then.
Yeah, really. Yeah. The way that we have it set up now, a lot of people get like, you get a lot more like intimate experience with like your special, like your groups of frogs. And that allows us to kind of specialize and tweak our care and kind of like change things that we weren't able to do before when we kind of had a one size fits all kind of deal. I mean, a lot of the dart frogs are like similar in general, but like it's, I don't know, it's nice to be able to like kind of exploit these differences and like really take advantage of like the unique features that the different frogs have.
Cool. I'd love to talk about some of those unique features of Phyllobates, but let's just talk about them just as their own, not comparing and contrasting, but maybe like how do you describe Phyllobates? I guess maybe you could do some compare and contrast, but like what is a Phyllobates? Like how do you know that it's a Phyllobates, and what's kind of different about them from other dart frogs?
I guess starting out with like the bigger, bolder group of like the Phyllobates family, like the terribilis and the bicolor, they're kind of like a bigger, like stockier dart frog. They almost have like a toad kind of body.
Yeah.
But they have that smooth frog skin, and then it kind of has like some bumpy back legs. They're a solid color generally in the wild. Like they're the golden poison frog is the common name. So like a solid like yellow or orange or even like the mint green. Then like the bicolors on the other side are like yellow, and then like their legs are green or black. And the other half of the Phyllobates family are kind of like smaller. It's the Vitatus and like the Artania. They have kind of like a leopard frog kind of shape. They're a little more triangular, smaller as dart frogs compared to like the bolder side of the family.
Cool.
But they're pretty big and robust.
So we always want to do a disclaimer when we're talking about poison dart frogs, and you've been calling them dart frogs. Can you talk about toxicity? Like, are these things dangerous to keep?
Starting now, all of our frogs here, all of our captive bred dart frogs are not poisonous. All captive bred darts, they're safe to handle. They're good to touch at home. If you need to move them around, you've got nothing to worry about. But in the wild, the Phyllobates are the most toxic frog species on the planet. Like, they are extremely toxic. They are like the dart frog. They're actually used by like some tribes to like kind of tip their arrows and like do hunting and stuff.
That's cool. One of the cool things I really like about dart frogs in general, but especially terribilis, is I feel like they know that they're poisonous. They got this feeling of like, hey, I'm poisonous. You're not going to mess with me.
They're definitely like very bold. Like a lot of the Tinctorius still eventually like they get bold, but the Phyllobates are kind of on a different level. They're like as fearless as they are curious. Like the other day when we were in over the weekend, like adjusting racks and moving tanks and stuff, they were all just kind of in the front, like checking us out, like kind of like, what are you guys doing here? It's the weekend. And like when I'm in there, like messing with the tank or like cleaning stuff out, they don't move. They just like come over and like, oh, are you feeding me? Yes, no. And then like they like only move if I'm like, hey, can you like slide over a little bit and like kind of give them a little bump? And even then they don't go too far. So I don't know. They're just a ton of fun. They're totally fearless. They know that they're poisonous.
Now you talked a little bit about the differences between like the Vitatus and the bicolor and the terribilis. Do we set them up differently? Do they act differently? Like, what are some of the things that are the same and different among those groups?
So a lot of our terribilis and the bicolor we'll keep in like 40 gallons. They do really well in like larger groups in captivity. I mean, some of them we have in like 20s, but in general, we'll have like 5 to 6 frogs in a 40 gallon. They like a lot of extra like floor space. They will climb and do some climbing, but they're like bigger, heavier dart frogs compared to a lot of the other ones, the terribilis. So like the floor space is a little more important. We'll keep them in the 40 gallon. And then the Vitatus, we also have set up in a 40. They do, I don't know, they're pretty well. They're a little smaller. They do great in the 20 as well. They're good in groups. Mm-hmm. Also, I guess compared to all of our other dart frogs, we keep in like 20 gallons and like smaller, like either pairs or trios. And these guys will keep like larger groups together.
Cool. Now, you talked a little bit about bicolor and terribilis. Like a lot of people will kind of group them together and be like, they're kind of the same type of frogs.
Close.
Yeah. Do you notice anything different between terribilis and bicolor? Because I know when I was working with them, like I can remember the terribilis, I felt like they were a bit more larger bodied than the bicolor, but that was about it. Like I felt like they acted the same, they bred the same. Like any other differences that you're noticing?
They're definitely the terribilis compared to the bicolor. They're a little larger, I guess, and I guess the biggest difference is their solid color versus like the bicolor. Like the legs are different. The bicolors either have like green or black legs, maybe even a little blue, and then the terribilis are all like one solid color. Unless you have one that has like a little bit of a splotching and stuff, but like that's normal.
That's cool. Now, talk a little bit. You talked about how we set them up in 40 gallons. Like, what's the substrate like? What are we doing with plants? Talk a little bit about petri dishes and cocoa huts. Like, what are we doing? How else are we setting them up? What to be successful with them?
We do kind of like a similar, I guess, setup for most of the dart frogs. You got to build the cake of the terrarium. Start with the drainage layer. That way, I don't know, for a lot of like dart frogs or high humidity, like herps and stuff, you want that water to be able to kind of come through and not pool and get stagnant and stuff. And then we have our the cover thing, and then some AVG, a little layer to get your isopods and the microfauna going. A good established like cleanup crew like is really healthy, especially if you have smaller frogs. And then for like the plants and stuff, I don't know, I like to pick some plants that are a little sturdier and hardier for these like bigger frogs, so that way they can like kind of climb around and stuff. They will, like, they're I don't know, curious like the other dart frogs. They'll be climbing up the side of the tank, or if there's like flies hiding under the rim of the lid, they'll go after them. But we usually have a couple cocoa huts in the tank, well, maybe like 2 or 3 in some of the larger ones with the 40s. And what's something different with the Phyllobates is we have the little PVC tubes as well. Some like little elbows and stuff. It's kind of like creates like a little like pool for them to lay eggs in as well. That's something that we don't really have in a ton of tanks, but most of the Phyllobates ones we do.
Now, do you know, like, when did we start using those elbows? You know, how do we find that was like a good thing to do with those guys?
The technology of the elbow predates my start, to be honest. But I don't know. I guess it's just like kind of like creates that little safe space and sort of like a hide to get away. They enjoy like all the dart frogs really like they need a place to hide.
Cool.
They like to get under and inside a little like crevice
Yeah.
to like kind of hide and lay their eggs. When
Cool.
we put some newer, bigger leaves in there, like sometimes they'll like be laying under the leaves and stuff, and they like I don't know, just kind of like a flat surface that holds a little bit of water.
Cool.
That's what they're going to be looking for.
Talk a little bit more about breeding. Like how are they breeding? What's a little bit different about them? I know you've worked with some tinctorius. Like how is it different or similar to other dart frogs?
The Phyllobates, the first thing that's different is they have like the loudest call out of like all the dart frogs we have here. Like you'll definitely hear them. It's a big, like beautiful, long call. That's probably the biggest difference is, I don't know, they're loud, they're vocal, they're not afraid to call like right in front of you. Some of the other frogs are shy and they'll like stand up on their hut and like do the little like scream,
Yeah.
Get ready, call in the ladies.
Get ready. I love it.
But yeah, definitely. But when it comes to like the eggs themselves, like Phyllobates lay larger clutches than most of the dart frogs. A lot of like the tinks and stuff, they'll be like 5-ish eggs, and then Phyllobates it'd be like between like 10 and 30.
Wow.
Like in a clutch. We collect once a week, so maybe they lay like once or twice in that period over the week. But like generally, like the average clutch size will have like at least 10 up to like I don't know 30-ish or maybe even more if there's like multiple females like laying in one spot.
Cool. Now they're laying bigger clutches than some of the other tinctorius. What about survival rate of those clutches? Are those clutches harder to take care of and get to tadpoles? Are they similar? Like how do you like compare it to tinctorius? Like are you getting the same amount of tadpoles out of a clutch of eggs or?
I mean, most of the time you'll get more tadpoles out of a Phyllobates clutch compared to some of the other dart frogs just because they have more eggs.
Yeah.
But in general, there is more die-off
Yeah.
in the eggs. Like you're not very rarely do I have like a full clutch of like 20 tadpoles.
Yeah.
Come all the way through in one and they're all in the little
Yep.
cup that you
Yep.
have to pull out at the
Yep.
same time. But I don't know, they're a little smaller and in general, like I guess you'll get more, but the survival rate per like egg clutch is a little less in
Yeah.
general.
Yeah.
They kind of go with more of that like lay more eggs kind of strategy, the more R selected side.
Yeah.
But
yeah. And especially too with doing them in groups, I'm guessing some of those clutches are not all just one female. Like,
yeah,
I'm guessing
definitely. There's got to be a couple going on, or they'll like lay in multiple spots. Normally, there's like more than one like egg clutch hidden around, or like
Cool.
I have a couple tanks where it's like every cocoa hut. There's like a couple in here, there's a couple in there, and they're just like still figuring out which one they like the best.
That's cool. That's cool. That's cool. Now, talk a little bit about the tadpole care. How are we raising those tadpoles? I know some people raise them individually, some people raise them in groups. Like how are we doing it, and what have we found?
So like over time, I guess when I started and how we do most of it still is we raise them individually, like in the cups, most like the other ones. But recently, I don't know, we've done a little bit of an experiment. I guess Brandon and I, we have some breeding pairs at home, and we've had some tadpoles like lay in our clutches that we've kind of kept all together. And
Yep.
we're like, hey, these aren't like they're not immediately like cannibalizing each other,
Yep.
like most of the other dart
Yep.
frog tadpoles do. And so we've done a little bit of a group raising thing and kept some tadpoles similar to how we keep some of our tree frog tadpoles, and we've seen some great success in that. So we're kind of looking into doing a little bit of that kind of stuff.
That's cool.
And I don't know, yeah, it's really cool. They've come out a little larger.
That's
and,
cool.
They're healthier froglets
That's
for
cool.
it. So I'm excited.
Talk a little bit about size, like Phyllobates, adult size compared to other dart frogs, but also their tadpole sizing and then froglet sizing. Like how do they compare to some of the other dart frogs?
I guess starting with the adults, the Phyllobates, they're generally a little larger. They're on the bigger side. They're not the largest dart frog. Like some of the tinctorius will be a little longer. They're kind of lankier, but Phyllobates are definitely like the heaviest dart frog.
Mhm.
They're like stocky. They've got that like bigger build to them.
The weightlifting,
Weightlifters
weightlifters of
they are
dart
strong. Like a lot of the dart frogs, they'll always try to like wiggle out of your hand, but these guys, they will push. And I don't know, when they jump, like they just have like incredible strength.
That's
like they
amazing.
can jump all the way out of the tank if they want to. But and then tadpole size, tadpoles start out a little bit smaller than most of the like dendrobates. And then I don't know, when they kind of grow, they'll eventually kind of get about to the same-ish size. The tadpoles are like lighter in color. They're not like the solid dark like dart frog tadpole. They're a little like grayish, slightly opaque, kind of almost looking like Epipetabates ish.
Yeah.
And in between, but the froglets, then they come out, they're generally smaller than a lot of the other ones that come out of the large dart frogs, and they have like they're, I don't know, very different than the adults looking. They're almost like black. And then they have their two little like stripes that run from like the snout all the way down to the back, depending on like what morph they are. They're like either orange or gold.
Yep.
And then their legs are a little different colors.
I like that a lot of the Phyllobates come out of the water looking different as babies. We see that a Also in some Aratus morphs as well too. But I just think that's a cool transition that they come out of the water
Yeah.
looking different than the adults. That's kind of cool. Some of the other tree frogs will do that as well too, and you can tell that they're utilizing either a different defense mechanism. So maybe the terribilis are coming out of the water. They need to hide first before they can get their toxins. But it's just interesting how that happens. So talk a little bit about care for these guys in terms of like what do people tend to need to watch for, or what do people tend to get wrong when keeping terribilis? What are some of the pitfalls that people might have that you want to keep in mind as you're keeping them?
I guess starting with the adults again. I don't know. You want to have a good healthy layer of leaf litter. They Phyllobates can get some foot rot a little more than some of the other species. Their feet are a little different. They don't quite have like the toe pads like the other dart frogs, but they're still great climbers and stuff like that. I guess for all dart frogs, you want to keep them on a healthy layer of leaves. You want to have floor space. I think is a little more important than like verticality, since they don't like climb as high, and then they like kind of having that floor space to do some hunting, and stuff like that is always nice.
Cool.
And then with the froglets, I guess keeping them something that's different is people like, I don't know, people like to say they feed them every day because they're so small. We feed ours like every other day. And I think just in the beginning, like having them great access to like springtails or something a little even smaller than fruit flies sometimes really helps, because they do come out like smaller than that.
Yeah.
And just getting them like, I don't know, food that they can eat right away available, and get them growing.
Cool.
They'll become good eaters.
Comparing them to other dart frogs, to thumbnails, to tinctorius, would you say they're harder or easier to keep? And then, what are some things that make them easier or harder than other darts?
I feel like in general they're pretty easy to keep. They don't promote or present too many unique challenges compared to some of the other frogs. We keep them generally the same. They're pretty forgiving. I guess, I don't know. You want to have like a cleaner tank. You want to have like just keep the tank clean and stuff most of the time. I guess without their like natural toxin in the wild, I guess they are a little more susceptible to some like bacterial infections. Yeah. Because in the wild they do rely on that like high level of toxicity to just kind of like, I don't know, stay healthy and like keep other things off and whatnot. So you just want to have like a good like clean environment. Give them a little extra space.
Cool. Anything else that we should know about Phyllobates before we go to the lightning round? Anything you want to share about Phyllobates?
I guess a fun thing, I guess, that kind of goes in with the keeping compared to some of the other dart frogs is like, I don't know, they're pretty aggressive eaters, and it's really fun to feed them because they're kind of like little piranhas, like in the cartoon. Yeah. When they like jump up and down, if you're like, you crack that tank lid open, they're already like looking up and ready to go, and the moment they see fruit flies, they're like jumping up at the cup and stuff. So it's, I don't know, it's really fun. And that kind of sets them apart from a lot of the other dart frogs, which I think is cool.
And I know some terribilis can even eat a little bit larger prey, like even up to 1/4 inch crickets.
Yeah, definitely. Yep. Yeah. Whenever you get to the larger feeders, I guess whatever fits between the eyes is kind of like the rule. And yeah, they'll definitely take down some of those larger crickets. Well, we feed ours like 1/8 inch crickets, which is like a good size for a lot of any of the adult dart frogs. But every once in a while, you get one that's a little bit bigger in there, and then we'll feed them to the Phyllobates, and boy, they go right after them.
That's so cool.
They're fearless.
That's so cool. Thank you for educating us on Phyllobates. I feel like you did a good job of presenting how easy they are to care, and a little bit of the differences between tinctorius. So thanks for doing that.
Yeah,
so,
hey, no problem.
Let's move to the lightning round. I'm going to ask you these questions. Just give us the first thing that comes to your mind. If you want to pass on a question, you can pass on a question, but just give us what comes to your mind first. So, all right, if money and space were no issue, you had all this money, all this space, what's your dream pet that you would have?
I gotta go with either the Japanese or Chinese giant salamander. They're just like way too cool. It's like a living fossil. I love salamanders as well, but just to like have one of those would be, I don't know, it would be way too cool. Or even just like to work with like that species at some point down the road. I don't know. They're totally awesome.
I love Detroit Zoo had them out on display I think they're behind the scenes now. But when they were on display, I'd have my 2 and 3 and 4-year-old kids just lay next to the giant salamander and take a picture of them next to it. Like it's really cool.
They're
really
so
cool.
Sweet.
All right. Besides Josh's frogs, what is one brand in our hobby or that's doing quality animals or really cool animals, or some product that you like think is really cool? Who's somebody that's doing something really cool in our hobby?
I mean, I know one that I got to mention really quick that we rely on a lot is the Repashy Calcium Plus is always a good one. That's just like, it's a good, I don't know, calcium, and it has a little bit of the multivitamins and stuff. It runs our froglets, and it's awesome. Cool. But a more notable thing, the ABG, the Atlanta Botanical Gardens blend, that substrate blend is awesome. Cool. It works well with a little bit of everything. Yep. It's that middle ground between like the tropical biobedding and the other stuff. Like we use it for a lot of our, I don't know, it'll keep your little springtails and isopods really happy.
Cool.
And I have another one for that one is the Indian almond leaves.
Yeah.
Like those like run our tadpoles. It's our preferred source of tannins.
Yeah.
And big shout out to whoever gets those leaves.
That's awesome.
We love those.
That's awesome. Cool. All right. You talked a little bit about leopard geckos earlier. Was that your first pet, or did you have something before that?
My very first pet was a gray tree frog that jumped off my grandma's door onto my face sometime in elementary school. I was less than 10 years old. That was my first pet, was a gray tree frog. Then I had some fire bellies a little after that.
Yep.
And then worked my way up to the leopard geckos.
That's
and then
cool.
kind of took a break as I was going to school. I was like, I'm not ready to care. I can't take care of myself. I don't need a whole pet right now. But, yeah.
That's cool. All right. Of all the animals and plants in the whole world, like what's your one hey, that's my favorite. That's the coolest one, I think.
I mean, I guess my favorite animal are dart frogs.
Really? Cool.
From the beginning, I've always I don't know, I've loved those little guys, and I guess I'm just like really happy to be here and be able to work with them.
Cool. When you were a kid, before you went to college, what did you want to be when you grew up?
Paleontologist for
Oh,
sure.
cool.
I was almost out digging up rocks and bones. A victim of Jurassic Park and the Land Before Time.
Oh yeah.
Love my dinosaurs and just like natural history. And,
Oh, that's cool.
Everything from the beginning. I love watching those like dinosaur documentaries and stuff.
That's cool.
They've always been a blast.
That's cool. All right. What do you do if you have like a free hour of free time? Like no one's asking for your time. You have a free hour. What are you doing in that time?
If it's just like an hour, I'll probably just play some video games. It's always a good time to just kind of like tune out and like kind of, I don't know, escape from a little bit of reality and dive in and have some fun. If I have a little more time, I guess I always like to hang out with my friends, but in general, we'll play games together either way, so they kind of overlap.
What's your video game of choice nowadays?
We've been playing a lot of Elden Ring.
Cool.
That one, I don't know, that's been my like solo adventure, and then when we get the friends together, we'll play like Halo or Chivalry.
Oh, cool.
A little bit of everything in between.
Cool.
We do a lot of jumping around.
All right, last question, probably the hardest question. If you had a bunch of people listening to you talk and they were just listening to you, and you could say anything to them, what's the one thing that you would say to them? What's the piece of advice or the reminder that you would give everybody?
I guess I don't know, one like I guess positive message or something that I still try to go through is just like keeping it simple from elementary school, like the golden rule. Like you want to treat others like the way that you want to be treated. I think that's a good way to like kind of approach like people in life. And I think as you get older, it kind of comes into like appreciating different perspectives and like what people have like kind of been through. And you just want to be able to put yourself in someone else's shoes and just try to understand. Everyone's a living human being. We're all like, we share this like gift of life that we all have. You know, we're the only planet that's doing it that we know so far. So, we got to help each other out and just like be nice and have fun.
Cool. Thank you for sharing that, Hunter. Appreciate you educating us on Phyllobates. If you are on Josh's Frogs, the videos, a lot of times Hunter does some of our lives. I think you've done some writing for us, or at least have started to do some writing for us.
Here a little bit.
All right.
It's just for like, I guess, wherever we're talking about, or we're getting ready to do the videos, we'll like smash the little script together. Just a skeleton.
Cool. So make sure you check out some of the content that we have. You'll see Hunter's face all over a bunch of stuff. But besides that, thanks a lot, Hunter, and have a great day.
No problem. That was a lot of fun. Thanks.
Thank you for tuning in to today's episode. If you enjoy this content and want to stay up to date, make sure to like, subscribe, and follow us across social media. We always want to bring you the best content, so let us know what you think in the comments. And for all your reptile and amphibian needs, be sure to check us out at joshsfrogs.com. We have an amazing selection. Until next time, stay curious, stay froggy, and keep exploring.